the declaration of the end. The declaration of the end. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 12. The declaration of the end. It says that there's a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. So say there's a particular way. This way, in the sight of a man, the way looks right, the way looks okay, the way looks good in the sight of a man. But the end thereof is the way of death. What it means is that you cannot judge the way from the beginning. You can only tell the true nature of this way at the end. The true nature of a thing is revealed at the end of it. You can't tell it from the beginning. You get to the end. So at the beginning, to a man, it might look okay. But it says the end can be destructive. There are certain meals, when you see some people cook certain meals, you can be so excited at the beginning when you are picking the aroma. By the time you enter into and taste the food, you understand the scripture better. Yeah, that it can look so right at the beginning, but the end can be so dangerous. But it says there's a way to a man, not to God. To a man, the way can be right, but the end can be the way of death. But when you start with God, the beginning might look faulty. The beginning might look as though it has certain issues. The beginning might look complicated, but the end would always be glorious. With God, the beginning is right, but in your sight, with God, the beginning might look questionable. When you're starting a journey with God, when God leads you in a particular way and you start that journey, the beginning you might doubt if really you heard God well. You might doubt if really you're taking the right step. But we know it at the end. We don't know it from the beginning. So Ecclesiastes 7 verse 8 tells us that better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. And it says that the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. So the end of a thing is always better. The end of a thing is always glorious. The end of a thing is where we really tell the true nature of the thing. In Deuteronomy chapter 11 and verse 11, a scripture that he mentioned during the intercession time or during the welcome charge, it says, verse 11 down to 15, it says, "But the land whither ye go to possess, it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven." Let me just pause here. It means that this land is sustained not from earth, but its sustenance is from heaven. Verse 12, it says, "A land which the Lord thy God careth for. The eyes of the Lord thy God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year, even unto the end of the year." So this particular land God has brought you to, God does not abandon this land at a particular point of the year. God is with this land from the beginning even until the end of the year. And it continues. It says, "And it shall come to pass," the condition, "if you will hearken diligently unto my commandments, which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." Verse 14, if you follow the commandments of verse 13, verse 14 says, "That I will give you the rain of your land in his due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and thy wine and thy oil. And I will send grass in thy fields for thy cattle, that thou mayest eat and be full." So here, Moses is talking about something. He says there's a land God is going to bring you to. Now, he was talking to a people who have not gotten into that land, but we have been ushered there already. And he says that this land is watered from heaven. It is sustained from heaven. So you cannot tell the things that will happen on this land based on the occurrences that happen on earth. The land is sustained from heaven. We saw an example of it when there was famine in that land. And then the people were confused. They started eating human beings. And then a man said, when the prophet had declared that tomorrow by this time things can change, a man who understood the systems of earth said that it is not possible. But what he didn't know was that this was a land that its rain came from heaven. And God honored his word. So that's the land God has brought you to, where the sustenance is not from earth. It says, but in this land, he would cause your rain to fall. He says, I will give you the rain of your land. So your own land. It means other people's land can lack rain. But God says, I will give you the rain of your land in his due season. So there are due seasons for rains. You must understand that rain does not fall every time. God does not cause rain to fall every time. There are due seasons for rain. So he says he will cause the rain to fall in his due season. And when it's such a due season, he says it's the former rain and the latter rain. So the rain God causes to fall are in two folds. There's the former and there's the latter rain. The former rain is the rain you see at the beginning. But that's not the only rain. There's a rain that is declared to happen at the end. So there's an aspect of God you can experience at the beginning of whatever God ushers you into, like the year 2021. There's a rain that God ushered at the beginning, but there's also another rain that is scheduled for the end. It's called the latter rain. So at the beginning of the journey, there's something we encounter of God. But that is not all. There is something God reserves for the end. And it is always better. Whatever God gives you at the beginning is good. But whatever God reserves for the end is better. Say, what God had at the end for me is better. Say it like you're a prophet. Say, what God has for me at the end is better. Hallelujah. So Isaiah chapter 46 verse 10 says something about God. He says, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. So it tells us a certain nature of God. He says that there are certain declarations God makes. He says he declares the end from the beginning. At the beginning, there's a certain declaration of God you will hear. Every time God is going to start the people on his journey, you will always find God giving the people his word. God starts the journey of any man's life with a word he proclaims over them. When God brought man into the garden, before he will give him anything, he first gives him his word. At every journey, when God will meet Moses, he will give Moses his word. When God will even bring in Jesus, before Jesus will start the ministry, the word, God always starts with a declaration. But here, Isaiah is making us understand the declarations of God. He says, what you hear God speak at the beginning, actually what God is speaking is the end. The declaration that is heard at the beginning is the declaration of the end. So, if you're in Reconciliation Church, for example, and you are told at the beginning of the year that you are anointed to overcome, and you understand God's ways of speaking, what that means is that God is actually telling you something about the end of 2021. Sometimes we think that what God means is just focused on the beginning. So you can start and get to January and look at the way challenges are hitting you left and right. And you cannot see your top. And business is messing things up. And family issues too are there. But God, you said I am anointed to overcome. That was in January. Okay, February, there's another dimension of problem. But God, you said I'm anointed to overcome. March, no, you see, because you didn't understand. What God was saying at the beginning was the declaration of the end. And you find so many times, like the children of Israel, for example, having issues when God told them that I'm going to take you to the promised land. You see, they didn't understand it was the declaration of the end. So immediately they got out of Egypt. What they started expecting was that they are getting into a land flowing with milk and honey. So they couldn't understand certain things that were happening. So they were complaining all through the way. They asked Moses, why did you bring us out of Egypt? Because they expected that what God said to them from the beginning of that journey was going to happen by their next step. After Egypt, now here are people that are in dominion. But after Egypt, they kept on fighting, they kept on fighting, they kept on fighting, they kept on fighting, they kept on fighting. Because what God declared to them at the beginning was seen at the end. So if you are in December, actually, you are anointed to overcome is when it's actually about to start. Whatever you have seen at the beginning, whatever testimonies you may have encountered of the thing being anointed to overcome, is what I call the former rain. But there's a latter rain which actually brings to pass what God told you. So it means now you are supposed to start getting ready to overcome. We get to the end of the year and we think, okay, now that's the fulfillment of that word. So we are getting ready to rush into what is the new word coming in 2022. Actually, the end of the year is when you see the better aspect of what God prophesied. The end of the year is when you see coming to pass what God has said to you. So if you come to the end of the year, whilst you are thanking God and whilst you are celebrating, you must also be focused not to miss on what God has for you. In the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 1, another prophet of God speaking, it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. So he says, I'm going to stand upon my watch. He says, I'm going to watch to see what he will say. So when God speaks to us, you don't just hear, you see. Your eyes are to be opened. Verse 2, he says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision. Make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. But at the end, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. So here's a prophet of God, someone who is conversant with the dealings of God. He says, I'm going to stand to see what God is going to say. Then God comes and tells him that what I'm about to tell you, write it down. Write the vision. Whatever God drops in your spirit, have the culture of writing it down. Put down the things God ministers to your spirit. It's very crucial. He says, when you write it down, make it plain. Let it be easily readable, that whoever will read it will run. That's one of the reasons why we have boldly written whatever God tells us at the beginning of the year, so that you can see it. That's why you have it as your stickers on your Bibles, on your cars and whatever. You are supposed to write whatever God says to you. So when you come to church, one of the important things you're expected to do to sustain whatever word God gives you is to write it down. There is no prophet of God in scripture that God gave his word to that was not expected to write it down. That is how come we still have their words today. So a good culture, come with your Bible, but come with your notebook and pen. So he says that whoever reads it, something happens to the person. The person is energized to run. The vision does something to you. What God tells you gives you an ability to run with the vision. But here's an interesting thing he says. He says, but at the end, it will speak. He says, write the vision, make it plain upon tables, that he will run that read it, for the vision is for an appointed time. What God had already told you, had already shown you, has an appointed time. Yes, he told me at this time. He told me at the beginning of the year, but there's an appointed time for it. And he tells us an idea of that appointed time. He says, at the end, it shall speak. So you have gotten the vision, you are running with the vision, but yet the vision is not yet speaking. So I have believed what God told me. I am running with the vision God told me. I am running with this word God told me. But yet you look at it and it doesn't look like this word is manifesting. Should I really believe when God told me this? Because I've been praying with it, I've been fasting, I've been preaching about it, I've been declaring it, but I don't seem to see it. No, you run with the vision, but it's at the end it speaks. That is why you must write the vision down. Because if you don't write the vision down, on the journey you might give up on what God told you, because there are going to be some issues you would experience about it. God tells Abraham, I am going to bless you and make you exceedingly great, and your children are going to be like the dust of the earth. God told Abraham that at the beginning when he met him. Now this is the journey. Abraham, who is giving this promise, starts his journey with God, but there's no child. No child given to him. But yet he has heard the word of God. Immediately God told him that there was an energy that was given to Abraham. So he left his father's house. He left, he abandoned. Lot followed him and Lot was blessed. But Abraham, who had this word from God, was also blessed by what God told him about the children. He didn't have it. Now, Abraham had to wait for 25 years for a child from a promise God gave him at the beginning. If that word was not kept in his spirit, he would have given up. Remember, you can't say Sarah was barren for 25 years. Sarah was barren for 25 years after she heard God. So it's after God had told her, then you now start calculating. For 25 years, no child. But Abraham counted God faithful. So he kept on. Lot, who did not even receive the promise from God, had children. He had 2 daughters. Abraham, who received, couldn't. At the end of the day, it looked as though Abraham had to go another way to get the promise God gave him. But the Bible says, at the end, it will not lie. It will speak. So here's it. Now, Abraham is there at a certain point called the appointed time. And now 3 angels come to meet him. And then now Sarah is just at the point of giving up. Because now I am at 99. This my guy is at 100. We are getting to another phase. We have hit 100. Now the angel comes and announces to them the appointed time. He says it is a year by this time. So, wait, what God told Abraham 25 years ago, actually it was supposed to happen a year after his 100. That's why you must keep the word. It speaks at the end. So, I have gone through this year. Now, but here's it. It's always better at the end. Now, Lot, who had 2 children, and it looked as though Lot had gone ahead. Lot went to pitch his life close to Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot was blessed financially, but he was located around Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, Sodom and Gomorrah is about to be destroyed. Remember what I said. The beginning might look right to a man, but we know the truth at the end. Lot had followed Abraham, and that's why he was blessed. Because of the word, he followed God's word. Now he had chosen to separate himself. He was prospering, but at the end, the land where Lot had prospered is the land that is supposed to be destroyed. So all the work of Lot was just about to go into the gutter. He's about to vacate a land that is just about to be destroyed, where he has stored. Now he leaves that place and he's going, and his wife turns into salt. But he has two daughters. The two daughters leave, and then they now discover that they never married before leaving. Then they have gone with their father because of the distraction in the land, and then they've gotten to a place and discovered that there are no men there. And they checked their biological clock and said, the way these things are going, we might not have a child. Our generation is just about to end. So they get their father drunk and have children from him. That is the end of Lot. What he hated in Sodom became his end. That is why God's word is what you must depend on for your end. It says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. Matthew chapter 13. We'll be reading verse 24 down to 30. I'm rushing so that probably we'll have some time to pray. Here was Jesus talking about a man in a certain land. Before I get there, we have a story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son starts a certain journey of life. What we see at the beginning of the life of the prodigal son is that he goes to meet his father and tells his father that, okay, there's what you have for me. Give it to me. The former rain. Give it to me. It's mine. And the father does not accuse him of coming for what is not his. It was the former rain. And so the father gives him what pertains to him at the beginning. Now this guy goes on a journey and wastes the resources that were given to him at the beginning. So now he finds himself eating the food that he has to feed pigs with. But he gets to a certain point and realizes that although I have messed up my journey, I can change my end. The beginning of my journey, I have messed it up, but I can do something about the end. So he decides to go back to his father. And as he goes to meet the father, so that the end of his story can be changed, he gets there and he meets his father already waiting at the end. His father knew that, see, there's still something waiting at the end. So his father was already waiting whilst he was coming. And he comes to the end and he tells his father, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your blessings. But I'm just hoping there's something little I can enjoy at the end. The man said, forget about it. You don't know what you're talking about. I reserve the best at the end. You think you received all my blessings at the beginning of the journey. No, that was the former rain. There's still something left for you. And so the father brings him at the end, decorates him, changes his clothes, and organizes a party to celebrate the son who recognizes that God can still do something better at the end. This can be for someone who, whatever God blessed you with at the beginning of the year, you messed it up. Whatever resources God gave you at the beginning of the year, somehow you just squandered it on useless things. People God brought your way to be of help to you, somehow you went about abusing the very help God provided for you. You ended up getting into unnecessary quarrels with the people God brought as helpers to you. You ended up causing unnecessary strife and bitterness with the people God brought as help to you. You ended up separating yourselves also from the people you were supposed to help. And you have messed up January to this point. But if you can recognize that God is not just the Alpha, He's also the Omega. So I might have messed up at the beginning, but God doesn't just stay at the beginning. I can still meet God at the end to change my life. So he gets to the father and says, no, change my life. Now here's another observer who looks at this boy and says, no, your ending does not deserve to be good. His elder brother. He says, no, you have messed it up. Father, you cannot give him anything. The man says, you forget about it. Join me in celebrating. There was something still reserved. It doesn't matter how your beginning may have been messed up. There are things God can still do to change your life. There's still a glory God can reveal that will beautify your life. Things might have happened in your life that may have messed things up, but God can still change the end. There are things God has spoken about your future that God can change. It doesn't matter the demonic altars that have been set up in families. It doesn't matter how things have played. See, God can change it. God can alter things. There are families I know of people who have gone into fetish things. See, you might have the most loving of parents, but you don't know certain things that happen at certain times. You can't tell what a person can do at a moment of desperation. When people have gone through issues that they have prayed about and there was no answer, they have fasted about, but there are no answer, and the problem is getting worse. You can't tell where a person will take their steps to. I was ministering at the special intercession service, and I was telling the number of people who were present in that meeting that has stepped into a fetish priest. One particular person had just gone there the previous day. No, he was coming for intercession service the following day, but the challenge is going, I must combine all the answers. Fetish priest on Saturday and then God on Sunday. And all these things can set up demonic sequences in the families of people. And now you have an innocent child that comes into the world but doesn't realize that there are some things that were set already ahead of time. And it looks as if within my family this is just the pattern. But you see, it doesn't matter where it started from. God can change the end of it. A man called Jabez, what we know of Jabez is that Jabez is very poor. Jabez is useless. But it's not that Jabez is just useless. Jabez comes from a family of people that are useless. So the Bible intentionally makes us know about the situation of Jabez. There's not just that the guy is a poor guy. The guy is a poor guy from a family that is poor. That is the way things are. But Jabez comes to a point in his life and realizes that, I can come to a God that can change the end. That can change the end. Hallelujah. Now, Matthew chapter 13. Verse 24, it says, another parable put he forth unto them, talking about Jesus. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence then had it tares? And he said unto them, An enemy had done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, say to the reapers, Gather ye together, first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So here is it. The first thing we saw with the parable of the prodigal son was someone who had messed up what God had given him. Remember, the Bible says that God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, that he will reap. Not whatsoever good thing a man sows. Whatsoever thing a man sows, he will reap. So if you sow bad seeds at the beginning, expect bad harvests. Sometimes, especially as Christians, you think you can sow bad seeds. But because you sing and dance, your harvest will change. You have good harvest because you sang after planting bad seeds. No, God cannot be mocked. But yet, God's mercies can prevail. That when the harvest comes, he knows what he can do. Now, we have a different story here from the parable. Here is a good man who had sowed good seeds in his land. So, what this man is to expect at the end is good harvest. Because he had sowed good seeds. So, good harvest should come. Whatsoever you sow, you reap. But the only thing was that whilst men slept, someone else came to sow also in his land. You are not the only person who plants things in your farm. You must be cautious about what people sow into your life so that you don't reap a harvest you are not anticipating. So, whilst they were sleeping, another man comes to sow something, tares among the wheat. So, for example, one of the ways you sow into your life is by the words you speak. So someone like me, I always speak health talks. I cannot be sick. It's not possible for me to be sick. Everybody can catch COVID. It is not possible with me. I've been declaring that for a long while. And I've seen the harvest of it. So I said, for 16 years, injection has not touched my body. And it can't still touch my body. No, I've been speaking it. But guess what? There are other people who can sow seeds into my life. So although I can be saying I cannot be sick, someone else can come and meet me and say, you look sick. Oh. The way you're coughing is like there's malaria. I must make sure I don't tolerate those seeds into my life. If not, at the end of the day, I will reap a harvest of a seed I permitted into my life that I didn't want. So now the enemy had sowed wicked seeds. Then they call the master and they tell the master, we have noticed tares growing. Let us gather them and burn them. And then the master gives them a very interesting, to me, also a scary information. He tells them that no, don't touch it. Leave the negative seed to grow together with the good. Because if you try tampering with the negative, you might at the end uproot the positive. It's just like those who like to plant flowers and stuff. If you allow grasses to start growing at certain points in time, depending on the nature of the flowers, it will now become so difficult to uproot them. If you start uprooting some of the flowers, like the creeping plants we have here, if you start uprooting some of the grasses, you notice that you start uprooting some of the flowers as well. So the man tells him that you wait. He tells him for a particular time. He says there's a time called harvest time. He says during the harvest, you are going to see the good seeds bringing forth their harvest, but you will also see the bad seeds having their harvest. This is the scary thing. The scary thing is that you can come to the point in your life where all the good things you have done starts reaping harvest. But unfortunately, there are also negative seeds you permitted that starts happening. So the blessings you are supposed to enjoy comes with a burden. The peace you are supposed to enjoy comes with another struggle. The joy you are supposed to enjoy comes with health issues. The money you have had already, now there's nobody to enjoy it with. The negative seeds are allowed to grow with the positive, with the good seeds. But this is what he tells them. He says, when you get to that point of harvest, I will tell the reapers that gather the negative and burn them and gather the positive into my barn. What it means is that at the time of harvest, there's a point where you start seeing the negative things in your life speaking loud. If it's the time of harvest, God has a package where he can deal with whatever negative harvest is in your life. So you can come to the end of the year, and certain struggles are still in your life. God says, at that point in time, I can gather them up. I was intentional when I left it to still keep growing. I knew what you were going through, but there's a time I was waiting for when I was going to come and clear all those things up. Job is there. The beginning of Job, we see some things that start happening into the lives of Job. Job is messed up. Job's health is messed up. Job has a couple of friends that have come to speak to Job. And as they are speaking, guess the shock? God is listening. He's saying what Job is going through, but God does not change anything. God is there because God had something he had put in place that it doesn't matter what Job is going through. Job was going to get to the end. Because he has a plan. I know the thoughts that I think towards you, they are thoughts of good and not of evil. Is to bring you to an expected end. It means that in between the beginning and the end, it might not be your expectations that you will see. But at the end, you will get that expectation. So God sees Job in what he's going through. And Job is praying and crying to God. But God doesn't seem to do anything. Because there's the end, the harvest time. So when you get to the end of Job, the Bible says the latter end of Job was better. And he starts announcing what happened to Job. So when you said the beginning of Job, he said that Job was the richest man in the East. No one could be compared to Job. Job had all this wealth. And then next thing we see, certain things started happening to Job. Certain things started happening to Job. Certain things started happening to Job. But better is the end. And so things changed. So if you have gotten to the end of 2021, get ready for some unique things God is going to do in your life. This is a time to believe God more than you believed God during the beginning of the year. This is the time to go before God and know that God, the latter rain for the end of the year, I'm believing it, I am stepping into it. I am so excited I'm in December because there's something that is left for me in December. The people at the wedding of Canaan, the Bible starts that story in a very beautiful way. The beginning was that there was going to be a great wedding, and in this great wedding, Mary was invited. Jesus was invited. Such a beautiful story. But as it continued, it says, now they lacked wine. Lacking wine in an Israel or a Jewish wedding is like lacking jollof in a Ghanaian wedding. Now, wine is finished. That is the next aspect of the story. So guess what happens? Mary, who knows what God can do, comes to meet Jesus and tells him that, see, these people don't know you. I've been with you for 18 years in their house. The 30 years of your life, we've been together. I know the things you can do. There's no wine. Do something. Here's what Jesus says. He says, what have I to do with you? My time is not come. What have I had to do with you? That is his response to her. It looked as though Jesus was not going to do anything. But I said that was not the end. That was still within the beginning. It looked as if the cry of the mother was not going to be heard. But she knew something about him. That don't worry, he's going to change the end. I came before the end to tell him, but he's going to do something at the end. So she goes to meet the disciples. He says, whatsoever commandments, whatsoever, the blessings of the end are to those who yield to the word of God. Whatsoever he tells you to do, do it. And he goes and he tells them, do this, put water in the water pot. And they took the water to the man. They have not been lacking water. They were lacking wine. But Jesus said that, don't worry. There's some, maybe another time. He makes them take the water to the man. And the man takes it and he notices something. He says, no, every man at the beginning of the year of 2021, they give you the best. Sorry, at the beginning of the year, of the wedding, they give you the best wine. He says, but you have reserved the best for the last. He didn't know he was dealing with God. Every man's way of doing things is that at the beginning of the year, they tell you, this is what we have in our budget. Get ready, we are going to do this. Doctors, we are going to increase your this. Nurses, we are going to do this for you. Entertainers, we are going to do this. This is the amount of money that we are giving you. At the beginning of the year, what men tell you is what you will receive in the budget. At the end of the year is what you will give. So they tell you your tax is about to go up. Your this is about to go up. That is men. But you see, with God, no matter what he gave you at the beginning, get ready for something different at the end. It doesn't matter what you have struggled. Get ready for something greater at the end. Zechariah chapter 4 verse 8. It says, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying. So when God's word comes to you, it should say something to you. So there's something God's word today should have said to you. It says, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundations of this house. His hands also will finish it. And thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts has sent me unto you. He says that hands that laid the foundation, he says that very same hands will finish it. For someone here who has started a project and it looks as if that business is just about to die, hear the word of the Lord to you. That same hands that started that business is going to be the same hands that are going to see the fulfillment of that business. That same hands that started that business, God is going to empower you to fulfill it. Can you just